won't waste another minute, no, I won't. I'm a man on a mission. I'm a man on a mission. I don't need no permission. I'm a man on a mission.
Welcome to Entitled to Nothing, where we believe our life is our fault. My name is Mink, and I am excited to welcome you to the first episode of this show. So today, I want to share with you the one decision that I believe has allowed me to do over $50 million in sales as an entrepreneur. I want to share with you two of the most painful experiences I've had because they're directly responsible for who I am today. I want to share with you what Entitled to Nothing is and why I think you should listen. I started this show because I've failed over and over. And through that process, I've learned a couple things along the way. My first business, I lost $100,000 and filed bankruptcy. I've had a negative bank account balance more than I'd like to admit. And after I figured some things out and I made my first million, I lost it all and had to start over again. And I found a way to turn those failures into lessons, and I've used those lessons to build a life on my terms. You know, my companies, as I said, have done over $50 million in sales. I love to travel, and I've had the privilege of traveling to 40 countries and living all around the world. And I want to share everything I've learned on my journey to help inspire you on yours. So this is a personal development show, and every week I want to have a candid conversation with you about mindset, about personal responsibility, and how we can learn and grow and be the best that we can be. And as I sit here and reflect back on my life and how I've got into the position that I am, I can wholeheartedly say there's one decision that I've made that's responsible for everything that I've been able to create and experience in my life. And that decision is this: my life is my fault, and I am entitled to nothing. And through a series of very painful experiences, I've come to that conclusion. But it's this conclusion that I said has allowed me to make $50 million as an entrepreneur. Over the last 12 years of my career, I've made a lot of mistakes, but those mistakes, when I took ownership of them, they allowed me to learn and grow through them. And that has ultimately led me to the results that I've had and the success that I've been able to create in my life. So I believe I am entitled to nothing. I believe you are entitled to nothing. I believe your life and my life are our fault. And I think some of you guys might be thinking, but there's all this shit happening in the world that I don't have any impact on, but it's affecting my life. How is that my fault? And it's a beautiful question because yes, there is external situations that do impact our life. But regardless of what's happening outside of us, how we react and respond is always within side of our control. And one of the things I've learned in my life is if I blame other people, situations, and circumstances for my experience of life, I'm giving them all the power. You see, power follows responsibility. And if I say, it's your fault, you're responsible for this, then I've given you the power. And when you give someone else the power, you become the victim of circumstance. And in my life, I want to be the creator of it. I don't want to be at anybody's I don't want to be the victim of anybody. I want to be the creator of my own reality. And I would think you would want the same. You want to be in charge of your life and you want a life on your terms and you want to be responsible for your experience. And I think the only way we can truly become responsible for our experience, to live a life on our terms, is to take complete accountability and responsibility for it. When you take the power back, when you take the responsibility back, you're taking the power back. And that is the decision I made in my life through, as I said, a few experiences. And that is the decision that I'm going to challenge you, invite you, and just implore you to make through this show, because I have seen the results of it in my life. And I know if you can get to a place in your life where you say, my life is my fault, and I'm going to take responsibility for all of my experience, that gives you the power to create the life that you want. And that is the one decision that has allowed me to have the success and the life and the experiences that I'm so honored and so grateful to be able to have. So I might sum it up by saying this: life is happening for me, not to me. When life is happening for us, there's a purpose and a meaning behind everything that happens. The good and the bad, the light and the dark, the painful and the sad. right? I believe that our Creator, whatever your belief is, I believe our Creator gives us the experiences of life that He does so we can learn and grow and become more as we move through them. And so what I would summarize all of this to be is the most important decision is, yes, I am entitled to nothing. Yes, my life is my fault. And ultimately, life is happening for me, not to me. It's happening so I can learn and grow and become the best that I can be. And if we can take that approach, if we can make that one decision, our life can be anything we want it to be. You become the artist, the author, the creator of your destiny. With that said, I want to share a story with you guys. And I've never told this one publicly before, but it is burned into my soul. And I really think this singular experience is the theme that has been consistent through my entire life. Growing up, my dad was a really abusive alcoholic, and he would say the most hurtful things. He told me that I was a worthless piece of shit more times than I can count. At one point in time when he was drunk, he told me he was going to kill me. He told me to burn in hell. He said the craziest things to me. And I remember when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my mom and dad were fighting. It was like really chaotic that night. And I went into the kitchen to get something out of the refrigerator. Little baby Anthony's like 5, 6 years old. He goes into the fridge and he's looking for something. And my mom and dad came into the kitchen and they were screaming and cussing and yelling. And I just got scared. And I curled up in a ball in the corner of the kitchen. Man, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because I've never shared this publicly before. And my mom saw me, and she came over and she picked me up and she took me into my bedroom, and she was laying in the bed and I was laying on top of her. And she said something to me that has dramatically and radically altered the direction of my entire life. I remember it like it was yesterday. She said, "Anthony, promise me 2 things. Promise me you'll never treat women the way that he treats me. And promise me you'll never act the way that he acts." And little baby Anthony's like, "Okay, Mom, I promise." And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. I went from reacting to every situation to observing it. You see, every time my dad would get upset or angry or drunk, I saw it as an opportunity to learn what I can't do so that I could learn to fulfill my mom's promise. And so I started observing him, and when he does this, that happens. And when this happens, that happens. I started to watch his behavior, and I started to ask the most important question I've ever asked myself. Why? Why does he act that way? And I started to learn and see what he was doing. When he drinks, he gets crazy. When he does this, that happens. He's negative about everything. The sky is always falling. And as I got older, I started to ask a slightly different question. Well, why does that person do that? Why does this person do that? I got picked on a lot growing up. Why are they always so mean to me? And this question of why turned into, why do we do what we do? And my entire life, I've been fascinated by that. And it's led to arguably all of the success I've had, learning to answer that question of why, learning to observe behavior and look for the lessons, look for the principles, search for the meaning versus getting caught up emotionally in the experience and just reacting. And I can tell you guys that when you learn to observe behavior instead of react, it changes your life. Now, of course, we always react in some situations, and there has been more times than I'd like to admit that as I grew up and got older and stepped into, being a man, that I confronted my dad and I gave him an equal and opposite, not an opposite, but an equal reaction. I stood up for myself, for my mom, for my family, but it was asking this question, why do we do what we do, that has allowed me to build the life that I have. And I think what I've learned from this is in life, especially in the world we live in today, where it's so chaotic and we're so much bullshit is jammed down our throat nonstop. Everything outside of us, I think, with media and social media and the way of the world today is trying to get a reaction out of us. And I think it's that reaction that's holding us back, that's stopping our ability to actually observe and see what's truly going on here. And it's that theme. I don't know if I've never even had this conversation with my mom. So this is the first time she's going to hear how powerful that moment was. But that moment radically changed my life, and it allowed me to learn the lesson to observe instead of react and to question why. And when we can ask ourselves, why do we do the things that we do? We're going to learn so much about the way that we experience the world. That self-reflection gives us the opportunity to turn all of the failures that I shared in the beginning of the episode with you into lessons. And then through observation, we can turn those lessons into opportunities and into growth. And that's what I want this show to be about. The second story I want to share with you guys is about how entitled to nothing became about in my life. You see, growing up, sharing the experience I just did with you, I observed my dad was blaming everybody for everything. It was always somebody else's fault. And he was negative about everyone. And nothing went right for us. We grew up we struggled, very humble beginnings. And there wasn't a lot of joy and happiness in my experience growing up, with the exception of my mom. She was a bright light in a very challenging and dark time. But I observed this behavior that was like always being the victim, always placing blame on everybody else. And therefore, my dad had no power in his life. He was a victim of his circumstance. And so, I growing up, I knew I never wanted to have that experience. I knew I wanted to start my own company. I wanted to create some success for myself. And as I said, my first business, I lost $100,000 and I had to file bankruptcy. And the truth is, when I was getting started, 20, 21, 22, I had no mentors to look up to. I had nobody that was a role model of success in my life. And I was just this scared, broke kid who had no idea how to make it happen. But after I lost that $100,000 and I was like trying to figure out where I wanted to go in my life, I made a commitment. And I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to commit to never, ever giving up. I will figure this out or I will fucking die. And it was that commitment to take radical responsibility for my experience that allowed me to take ownership of the situation. And by taking ownership of the situation, I started to piece some things together and learn and grow and connect some dots. And I started to have some success. And then I started to make a little bit of money and I started my first business and things were picking up. And then I got to a point in 2013 where I made my first $1 million. And I was exuberant. I can't even explain to you the excitement and the emotion and the feeling that I had. But what happened was that feeling turned into complacency. And the success that I had, I don't want to say it got to my head because I never got arrogant or egotistical, but I thought I had arrived. I thought I had figured it out. And what happened is I took my eye off the ball. And through this business, I made $1 million. I was doing well. And then over the next year, I started to sell some different assets of my company. And I sold this asset for $545,000 in cash. At one time, I got a deposit. It was like, oh my God, I have made it. I've never had this much money before. I thought I was set for life. Young, naive, 20-something Anthony. He just had no idea the way that things worked. And I took all of that money and I invested it into one idea. And 12 months later, I was broke. And I lost it all again. And I share that with you not to impress you, but to express to you that this was a moment in my life where I don't think I could have felt worse about who I was and what I was going through. I started with nothing and I built something and I had tangible success, actual money, more money than I thought I could ever have. And I lost it all. And I found myself blaming different things and looking at how complacent I had gotten and my behaviors, what got me to that level of success, those behaviors, those character traits, the work ethic had completely dissolved. And I had changed what I was doing. And I got so fucking mad with myself because when I looked at it, it was my fucking fault. It was my fault that I had built the success, and it was my fault that I lost all of it. And that's a very sobering feeling. And I had this moment where I was afraid to admit that I was afraid. I was losing everything, and I was like trying to figure out what to do. And, my bank account was getting less and less. More money was going out than was coming in. And I was so fucking scared. And I had this moment where I was so tense that I didn't want to admit defeat. I was afraid to say that I couldn't turn it around, because if I was going to admit that, then what was I going to do? And I just had this breaking moment. I remember I was sitting on the couch in the living room the night before I was supposed to fly to this big business event where I was, supposed to show up and be this successful business owner. And the night before, I admitted to myself that I was afraid, and I just broke down in tears. Again, I get emotional thinking about it because that moment changed my life forever. And the next day I got up and I got on the plane, and, I was a wreck. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to turn it around. And usually you prepare to get on a plane, you download some stuff, you have something to listen to, something to occupy your time with. And the night before I was such a wreck that I didn't do anything. And I got on the plane and I was just sitting there. I was like, God, I need to take my mind off of this. I need to listen to something. I need to read something. And I pulled up the Kindle app on my phone. And if you know me, I never read books. I only listen to them. But I didn't have anything downloaded. So I opened up the Kindle app, and the only book that was on my phone was called Courage. And I thought to myself, I need some fucking courage right now. God, do I need courage? So I opened the book up. And in the first page, sometimes in life, grace just happens. Wow, I did not expect to get emotional like this. Sometimes in life, you have to allow grace to take place. And grace was in that moment because I opened this book and I was like, I desperately need some courage. And the first preface of the book says this. It says, courage is not the absence of fear. It's taking action in spite of it. Burned into my brain. In that moment, I was like, I don't know how to turn this around, but all I need to do is have the courage to never, ever, ever give up. And it was in that moment that I, for the first time in my life, said, I am entitled to nothing. That was in 2015. I went and bought the domain name Entitled to Nothing then. And this has been on my heart ever since. And here we are in 2023. I'm all jacked up right now. Here we are in 2023, 8 years later, and it's coming to life, and I'm in front of you sharing these stories because I've come to believe the greatest gift we have is each other. And I think that it's my duty as a man to share some of these lessons and experiences I've learned along the way with anyone out there who is trying to learn and grow and improve, who sees a bigger, brighter future for themselves, who feels that fire inside, that potential, that opportunity, but they don't maybe know how to direct it. As I said, I didn't have a lot of mentors in the beginning, but as I started growing and having some success, I found some unbelievable mentors that are very responsible for me learning the lessons required to be here in front of you today. But it is that first experience with my mom that said, promise me you'll never be like this. Promise me you'll never be like this. That taught me the lesson to observe and sit in experiences rather than reacting to them. And it was that ability to sit in a moment and experience it and try to figure out what was in there for me that allowed me to learn that my life is my fucking fault. And I have to take radical responsibility for my results. And if I can do that, if I can live with this belief that I am entitled to nothing, then I am the author. I am in control. I have the opportunity to build a life on my terms. And that's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for me. That's my prayer for all of us, is that we have the courage to take complete ownership and responsibility for our life, and to take that power of being responsible for ourselves and use it to build something that is worthy of us, something that we really want to create and give back to our family and to the world. The moral of the story is I'm sitting with you guys today because I found a way to turn the pain in my life into purpose. And I've taken the failures that I've experienced and turned them into lessons. And I've used those lessons and this sense of purpose to create the success that I've had in life. And I just want to share what I've learned on my journey in the hopes that it inspires you on yours. Here's what I know for sure. The world doesn't need another podcast. It doesn't need another wannabe influencer or life coach or guru or social media celebrity. What the world does need, though, in my opinion, and I can only ever speak from my perspective and from my experience of the world, what the world does need is more truth, more authenticity, more vulnerability, and most importantly, more love. And that's what I believe Entitled to Nothing represents. I believe Entitled to Nothing represents the pursuit of truth, that the best thing that we can be is radically honest and vulnerable and authentic with ourselves, to love who we are and what we're going through, and to see that life is happening for us, not to us. Entitled to Nothing is about being the creator of circumstance, not being the victim of it. It's been said that we are most capable of helping the man or woman we once were. Well, in my life, I've been a broke, scared kid with zero self-worth and no idea what the hell I was going to do or how I was going to turn it around. And by taking responsibility for my experience of life, I've been able to build a company, to live a life, to create experiences and friendships that are so far beyond what I ever thought possible for myself. And again, I want to share everything I've learned on my journey with you through this show. I've come to believe that personal growth and taking responsibility for our life is the cure-all. It's the solution to all of our problems, and it's the only thing that's going to get us to where we have that desire in our hearts to be. I wholeheartedly believe the greatest gift we have is each other. And if we can learn and grow together, we can create whatever life that we want. And that's my prayer for all of us. I think that all of our problems can be solved when we learn and grow together, and when we say these three words: it's my fault. If we have the courage to take ownership of our experience, we are in control and the author and the creator of it. If you guys like this show, if you like the idea, if you like the premise, if you got valued from it, please let me know, drop me a comment. And the greatest compliment you could give me with this show is to just simply share it. I believe the life that we want is on the other side of the responsibility we courageously embrace. And my prayer is that we all have the courage to embrace it. I'll see you guys next time.